Hi, everyone, and welcome to The X, a podcast from inside Silicon Valley about how experience shapes everything from products to businesses to entire industries. I'm Brian McLean, and I'm here with Demetrius Madrigal. Today, we're going to discuss topics that are in the news this week. This is the week of October 29th, 2021. Demetrius and I picked a couple of topics each, and we're going to explore them. Good morning, D. How you been?
I'm doing pretty good. This is going to be an interesting week with some of the announcements that came out.
Yeah, a lot of stuff has been happening. Before we actually jump into that, I had this really interesting thing happen that I wanted to share with you. So the other night, I was feeling kind of like overworked, overwhelmed, whatever you want to call it. And usually, when I feel that way, what I do is I'll watch a movie or something, but I'll watch something that's really funny, like really interesting, but also funny, like 50 First Dates, or in this case, I watched Bridesmaids, which is so hilarious. I mean, I can watch it over and over again. I laugh every time. And one of the things that happens at the very end of the movie, they play "Hold On" by Wilson Phillips. It was recorded in like 1990,
Mm-hmm.
and it's such a great song, right? Like everyone always dances to it and loves it. And for whatever reason, I was like, oh, I'm going to bring it up on YouTube and watch the music video. I want to see how they filmed it. And so, they're filming it like Venice Beach or something like that. And I'm listening to it and I'm like, man, this song's great. So then, for whatever reason, I just clicked on the comment section, which I don't normally do because it's usually people writing absolutely horrible things about other people.
Mm-hmm.
And I was completely shocked. I spent like 20 minutes reading that section, and it was so supportive and so positive. And I wanted to read you a couple quotes, and it just blew my mind because, like, nowadays there's so much toxic crap going on online. It was so refreshing to read some of these things. But I know this is just a side note, but I just thought it was really interesting. So one person had said, I had a friend who wanted to end her life, but I told her to listen to this song, and now she's still alive just because she held on for one more day. This other person wrote, this song has really changed my whole outlook on everything. As I was getting ready to end my life as a teenager, this song came on and I started listening to the words, and it saved me from dying. And I haven't tried that since. And I'm now 47 years old. I mean, tons of comments just like that. And people saying, like, during the pandemic, I would just listen to this song over and over again. It got me out of my funk and that kind of stuff. In a world where we're constantly hearing bad news, like, about things that are happening online, it was like so nice to read something like this about a song and how it fundamentally changed people's lives.
Well, that's awesome. I don't really think of Wilson Phillips in that kind of way. I don't know that I ever connected to them in that way, but
Yeah.
like it really shows kind of the kind of power and purpose of art in our society is to kind of connect with it and how it can affect people.
Yeah, and it was just so nice. I mean, I couldn't find one bad comment in there. I mean, there's like hundreds of comments about this song, and it's like, hold on for one more day. And it's
Well,
just like that feeling of like you don't have to, just because today feels bad doesn't mean that you
yeah.
have to let go.
Well, they might get it now that if we bring it more attention, some troll could be like, "Oh, hey, there's somewhere where I can do my work."
Yeah, that's true. But anyways, it was just a
Yeah.
nice kind of side note. It made me feel good to read something about that. But let's talk tech news. I mean, there's a lot going on this week. This was a big week for tech companies. The first one was Facebook is now Meta, which is not exactly true. What actually happened is Facebook decided to follow the Google model, and instead of just being Facebook and having companies that they've purchased like Instagram and WhatsApp, they create a larger umbrella company. That company is
Hmm.
called Meta. Underneath that company will be Facebook, Instagram, Oculus, all the other assets that they own. And, for me, when I first heard it, I was like, oh, this is Mark Zuckerberg's way of kind of like hiding from all the problems they're dealing with. Like, he'll become chairman of Meta at some point, and someone else will take over CEO of Facebook, and that
Hmm.
person will have to deal with all the issues they're having right now. But what were your thoughts on this big announcement?
Well, my initial response to the name change itself is what a lot of people thought was that they're trying to protect some of their other assets from the Facebook brand perception right now. Ever since they added, I remember back not too long ago when people would be like, "Oh, Facebook is terrible. I only use Instagram," and I'm like, "Well, a lot of people had didn't know that Instagram was owned by Facebook."
Yep.
And so it did seem like, and then not too long ago they added like Instagram, a Facebook company, and I think they were trying to improve the brand perception of Facebook by using Instagram, and I think it did the opposite, and it kind of hurt the brand perception of Instagram. And I've seen um, a lot of people out there complaining about how Instagram's handled their content moderation. I think somebody posted something like completely innocent, like about like Animal Crossing or something, and somehow it got tagged as like, this is violent content and it can't be on Instagram. And I was just like, what? Uh, so I think there's a lot of frustration bubbling up with Instagram also, and it might be the case that they've got other brands like Instagram or WhatsApp or Oculus. And in Instagram's case, at least, it's that platform is probably doing better than Facebook proper. So I imagine they're trying to protect those. And you mentioned something about them moving away from social. I don't know if that's necessarily the case. I think that they're trying to kind of gamify social in a way so that it's still primarily social. You look at their announcement and it's people interacting with each other in a virtual space. So that's still social, but kind of doing it in this
Well, I
new
think it's like
kind
a
of way.
delusion, right? It's like you don't want your whole entire company to be built on this one thing called Facebook that is, has done a lot of harm, and also at the same time has been, under scrutiny by, regulatory boards and things like that. And
Yeah.
and also I think you were the one that said you were looking at some of the data, and it's like the younger people are not using Facebook. It's mostly older people
No.
now. Demographics are changing. I mean, they need to do more, right? That's what Oculus is about, WhatsApp is about, Instagram's about. I'm sure there'll be more acquisitions in the future, but like that's what they're trying to do. It's just one of many rather than the only thing they offer.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's all kind of within the same vein, right? It's like they're all social interactions. They're not necessarily really getting into gaming with this. There might be some games built within the meta experience, but for the most part, it's like, hey, look, I can sign into this metaverse, VR metaverse, and interact with people through avatars,
Hmm.
which is fine. That's helpful. It's just that there's a big question about the fact that this is Facebook doing it. And
Yeah.
it brings together several of the different applications like Oculus and WhatsApp and stuff under kind of a same umbrella because they're kind of being used together. But at the same time, it's like I kind of feel like Facebook is the least trusted brand in technology right now, and they haven't really helped themselves with how they've responded to some of the the accusations that they've come under. And there are, again, like you just brought it up, they have been kind of bleeding users from anybody under a certain age group. They're pretty much been mostly boomers and older Gen X on the platform. I don't know how many of those users are really going to want to put on a VR headset to interact with people. One
Yeah.
of my favorite moments from the launch video is like, oh my god, we're in space, and I'm like, wow, this person's never played a video game before.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, D, because it's like I look at this company and it feels spotty with Facebook right now. And what I mean by that is I know a lot of organizations that use Facebook as a way of just keeping the groups together, like whether it be like a stand up paddleboarding group near where I live or
Mhm.
whatever it is. But I've also heard a lot of really, really good things about Facebook Marketplace. Like so many people of all ages have told me like Facebook Marketplace is unbelievable. The second you post it, they find the exact person who would want that product, put it in front of their face, boom, they buy it.
Mhm.
Like it's a really good thing. So I don't hear a lot of people saying like, "Oh, I just love newsfeed. It's so good. I get all my information there." I'm hearing about like these ancillary things that they provide that keep you on the platform. You might not be
Mhm.
using the platform very often, but they keep you on the platform so that you'll continue to engage. But not like in the beginning where it's like people were on like hours a day, like scrolling through newsfeed. You know what I mean? I almost
Mhm.
feel like those people transferred over to Instagram.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not using. I'm trying not to use any of those. I think we talked about that not too long
Yeah.
ago. But like, it's interesting you bring up Facebook Marketplace because to me it kind of speaks to what is now Facebook's core competency, which is advertising. Right?
Yeah.
It's good at advertising this product, this item or product that you have for sale. And that's it's kind of driving what's going on for them right now. And you're seeing more and more advertising show up on Instagram and stuff where even if you're an individual trying to sell whatever it is, a piece of furniture or some used electronics or something, then they're good at putting that in front of people and getting them to buy it.
Yeah, no, I agree. Where do you think this is gonna go? Like, do you think that Facebook can pull this off and be the leader of the metaverse and this whole
uh,
new experience? I mean, just gut feeling. I know you don't have any data on this. This is all new, but I'm just
Gut
curious.
feeling,
As
no, absolutely
yeah,
not. I think they're like the perfect example of the wrong company to do this. And you might have had a different answer if it was like back like when they did IPO and it was a much better company from a UX perspective.
yeah,
Financially, they were worse off because they hadn't really given into kind of the desperation in order to increase the revenue.
yeah.
But it's not a very trusted company. It's a lot of people who might be early adopters for this. Not everyone, but a lot of people who might be have a negative perception of Facebook as a company. They're not going to want to give up more information about themselves in order to use this kind of thing. Like it's I mean, for me, I think of the Facebook experience right now, and the first thing that comes to mind are people arguing or harassing each other for over disagreements on something,
Hmm.
and that's partially because that's what the algorithm has emphasized because it keeps people engaged. But it's like when we were kids, they used to talk about good attention versus bad attention, and they've been just relying on the bad attention for so long. I don't necessarily want to log into a VR metaverse app in order to hear people like arguing with each other like more more realistically. That's not really the experience. What I imagine is going to happen is that we will be seeing articles in 2 or 3 years about hell, Facebook is gonna fix Meta or how Meta is going to fix Meta or something like that, and then somebody else is going to come along that has a better perspective, who has done a better job of content moderation, whose brand perception is more about a positive experience. And like maybe a company like Disney or even Apple or something like that,
Hmm.
and then they will be the ones who benefit from it after Facebook introduces and kind of explores all of these concepts, and they're the ones who basically make all the mistakes. Somebody else capitalizes on it.
A company that has trust issues, this just makes it an uphill battle. I mean,
Yeah.
this just makes it so much more challenging. I mean, you don't want to be like beating up your avatar. You know what I mean?
I saw a video out there. I mean, it was meant to be funny. But it was basically, I was like, oh, wow, imagine, all the things that I get through my DMs, I can now get through somebody saying it to my face. And then she read off the DMs and it was just like horrible stuff. And you were like, and she looked at the camera and was like, well, now I can have this person saying this to my face.
Yeah, exactly. To your virtual face, right?
Yeah, it's like, okay, now a more immersive, terrible experience.
Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't necessarily feel right to me, but at the same time it kind of does feel right in the sense that like
Yeah.
a rebrand is necessary for that company. I think for the most part, as a wrap up on this particular news piece, what I would say is that I think they need new leadership, dude. I mean,
Yeah.
there were times back in, I don't know when it was, maybe it was the early mid 90s or something like that, when people looked at Microsoft and used to call them like, the bad guys in the room, right? It was like they were the Darth Vader of, tech and all this stuff. And people really hated Microsoft, right? And
Hmm.
they had a leadership change. They really thought through what they were good at and what they weren't good at. And there was just kind of a lot that had to happen over the course of about a decade. And now people look at Microsoft as a great company that really produces great products for their customers, and they have really, really amazing leadership.
Hmm.
And so I think that this company needs to focus on that and less on like, oh, we want to kind of rebrand in this new way and kind of like distract
Yeah.
everyone and just say, hey, look, Mark, you got to go. Cheryl, you got to go. Like, let's bring some new people in here. Let's focus on trust and transparency and moderation and all the things that basically the community is asking for,
Mhm.
and see how things shake out.
Yeah, I think that this is the kind of situation where I've said this before. The culture is destiny within tech companies. You can't just throw
Yeah,
money at a problem and have it fix it. And it's the kind of thing where they need to change the culture of the company and how that can change the experience that people are having with it. They need somebody, super positive, super friendly, someone who's going to help to establish like a fun, friendly environment, both for the people working with it, working and developing these platforms, and by extension, that should lead to improved experiences for their users.
yeah, I would agree with that. All right, so next on the docket here, D, is something that we had a heated debate over GChat
Yeah.
about, which was that Netflix has launched some games on Android. So that was launched this week. Actually, I want to tell you, D, I actually looked it up. It was actually launched last night, I think. So
Well,
that's the
yeah.
reason why we couldn't find any like YouTube reviewers or anything. I think that's going to unfold like today and tomorrow, but at least we could talk about kind of what happened.
Yeah, I don't know that there's that much to review, honestly. Like, I checked this morning, and I'm still not having the game served up to me within the Netflix application. So,
Yeah.
uh, but the reality is, you look at these games. You have two. There's five games. Two of them
Well, let me
are.
pause you there for actually a second, D. Let's roll
Mhm,
back for a second. Let me just explain what actually happened. Netflix announced that it was launching games on the Android platform only. Excuse me, only this week.
mhm,
Um, and so it's not rolling out on iOS. It's not rolling out in other places. Just on the Android platform. Sorry. Go ahead.
mhm. So yeah, you look at the games that are available, and two of them are Stranger Things tie-in games. One of them was originally released in 2017. Another one was released in 2019. So a lot of people who are interested in those games have probably already played them, because you could just get them through the App Store or the Play Store. And then I think two or the other three were just kind of very generic kind of mobile games like match threes or little puzzle games. So it's they're coming out with games that are there's not a lot of reason to go and try these out. This is kind of like, it's notable because Netflix is doing this. So if anybody else was doing this, we would completely ignore it.
Yeah.
But they're not coming with, any kind of a AAA title or anything new to the game. Right now, it's just, all right, here are your games in a new launcher. It's kind of like what Apple did with Apple Arcade,
Hmm.
where they are promising no microtransactions, no in-app purchases, no advertising,
Hmm.
and then we'll see if they can really keep that up. So that might be the case, that the games that are in here, which have limited monetization for the companies to develop them, because they're really dependent a lot of times on those microtransactions in order to make their revenue, might be older games that have already made the revenue, or are just Netflix tie-ins that are intended to promote the Netflix content that they're streaming.
Yeah. And so my question to you is this. I know that you always feel like when you hear these type of announcements of like, oh, we're going to release mobile games now and things like that, and none of them really are AAA games or anything like that, and they're these very basic ones. What do you think their intentions are?
Honestly, I feel like their intentions are to cash in. It's just to, like, hey, a bunch of people, a lot of companies out there are making money on mobile games. Why don't we do that? And for me, this is disappointing because I was hoping that they would step in and they would be like a competitor to Steam and a competitor to Epic, the Epic Game Store, and those other companies out there who are also associated with game development, and they're putting out more casual games, but they're also putting out some higher end games. I mean,
Yeah.
even Apple Arcade has some more prestigious games associated with them. Um, right now, and I'm hoping that they can expand beyond this. It just feels like kind of a marketing kind of cash grab.
But what is the
So we'll
cash
see.
grab though? Like run the use case here. So how are they making money other than keeping you on the app longer, let's say, or grabbing people who want to use the app to play a game in the car or something like that rather than watching a movie?
Well, you just said it. It's a value add. Like, oh, now I can play mobile apps. I can stay in the Netflix universe longer, which means that I feel like I'm getting more It's a sticky experience, so I'm going to keep my Netflix subscription longer. One of the trends that we're beginning to see is that people are cycling through different content subscriptions. So they might have Netflix for 3 months, and then cancel it and get Disney Plus for 3 months, and then cancel it
Hmm.
and then go get something else for 3 months. And they'll do this to say like, all right, well, I'm going to have Netflix for 3 months, but then those 3 months, I'm going to catch up on all the content that was released in the past year. And that's kind of a reaction to the subscription fatigue of like not everybody wanting to get nickel to dime to death with all these different subscription services.
Hmm.
Now, if you have something that's stickier and more engaging, and you don't want to cancel it because you're going to lose your progress on whatever game that you've been playing, Journey of the Prairie or King or something like that, then maybe you can get people to keep their subscription. They'll stay engaged. They might pay for more users on it because grandma wants to play her favorite card game on there. Then it can open up use in that way.
Yeah. So one of my rebuttals to you this morning when you were saying like, they should have come out of the gate and had like AAA games and really been a Steam competitor. My rebuttal was so they can't just come out of the gate, start small, and then eventually over time grow the platform, build it out, add some more
Yeah.
games in it. And you said, well, you're not really a gamer. You don't understand. You are mostly spending your time on Switch, which is its own closed
Mhm.
ecosystem. So what am I missing here? Like, why is it a bad thing
Well,
to have an additional entertainment piece on the app and just have some fun stuff to play? You know what I mean?
one of the things is that it's an oversimplification to say they don't have any AAA games. They don't have any single A games. They don't have any B games. I mean,
Uh
at
huh.
best, they have some C games, and they've released with 5 games. And we all know that first impression is so important, and it
Hmm.
sets a tone for how committed they are to this and how seriously they're taking it. And to me, it looks like, and this can all change, right? But this is what a lot of users are going to look at is like, oh, hey, this is kind of a joke. I don't really need to pay attention to this. So it's kind of the tone they're setting. So one of the responses I said is like, if you were Disneyland, if you were Disney and you're starting to get into hotels next to Disneyland back in the day,
Uh huh.
you probably wouldn't start with a 2-star motel that's just next to Disneyland. You would actually commit to developing a really good experience because that's the experience you want to have with your brand,
Yeah.
not necessarily like some teeter totter game that you can't find a single YouTube video about.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I think I looked at it from a different perspective. I was looking at it from the perspective of okay, they're already kind of like dominant in this space of like video
Mm-hmm.
and all that stuff, and they're testing out this like segment of like I'm going to roll it out on
Yeah,
just a limited amount of Android phones. We'll see how people respond to it. We'll see what their needs are, and then from there we could do like a massive rollout to iOS and everything else. And maybe by that time we'll have a whole bunch of other games on
yeah.
there.
So a couple things is that within the environment, this number one, this is Netflix. This is not like a bootstrapping startup who's like trying to grow organically. They have the resources to really commit themselves to this and really establish that people can have a great experience with these games.
Uh huh.
For them to stick their toe in, gaming is not the kind of industry where you can stick a toe in. You have to really commit in order to have any level of success. I mean, even companies like Zynga are really committed to what they were doing.
Yeah.
And then you look at what's happening in the competitive landscape. Stadia is out there, and you can play major games. You can play Cyberpunk on it. You can look at Amazon's Luna, and you can play. You know, you can play. I think I had it up. You can play games like Control or Metro Exodus or Rime or Assassin's Creed. Like these are major games. Resident Evil, Biohazard. There's a lot of different games available within their competitors, so they're
Mhm.
playing catch up and they're sticking their toe in. And it's just not very compelling. You have Teeter Up and Card Blast versus Assassin's Creed. So it's like, come on, Netflix. This is something that you have the opportunity to step in, and even if you're going to do mobile games, you can have some original games on there that are, like some of the great indie games that are out there, and provide your users with a great experience, and hopefully try to advance the art form.
Mhm.
But that's kind of one of my questions I've had for Netflix a long time is that culture. this has already come up once, but culture is kind of destiny with a tech company. That's why I don't really buy all the rumors of a of a Apple car someday, because Apple doesn't make things with moving parts, right? If they don't have the culture in order to do this, and we see this with how they've canceled some of their media properties instead of
Hmm.
kind of staying committed to them because of the creative element to it. I don't know if they can really be successful on this, or they can just be basically a new game launcher.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it's kind of the way I felt like when Amazon first got into video, right? I was
Hmm.
initially going like, oh, they're just going to kind of do like because you can lease obviously all these different movies and things like that from other properties, and suddenly one day it's like Amazon, Microsoft, Google, like every single person has the same videos, the same movies, the
Hmm.
same everything on it, and it's just your choice of what ecosystem you want to be part of. And it felt to me like Netflix is kind of getting into gaming because it wants to have a super app. We've talked about that, right? And
Hmm.
the idea that they would have more offerings than just video content like movies and series, you know, and that may be true, and it might help. It might help out. It might be one of those things where they look at the demographics because I have no idea what the demographics are for Netflix. They're of all the companies they hold all this data very close to their chest, but like
Yeah.
maybe the demographic shows that the people who use the actual phone and the app and that kind of stuff are playing more of these like very simple little games, and they're not actually going to engage with the platform in the way that you would or someone else who's like big into gaming. I
Hmm.
don't know. I can't wait to see how this unfolds. I think by next week we'll probably have a little bit of feedback, right, from people who have tried it or experienced it
Yeah.
or that kind
Well,
of stuff.
the reality is there's a world of difference between some of the more successful simple games like a Candy Crush and what's currently available.
Yeah.
What their launch slate is in gaming, like what you have for a launch, is a big deal. So I mean, they can absolutely turn it around. I think Netflix is a great company. It was just struck me how disappointing this was from a launch perspective.
Did it feel like
Um,
a UX fail for you?
Absolutely. Well, for one thing, it's as a gamer, I'm like, okay, cool. What do they have? Uh, Two kind of licensed tie-in games that are just kind of interesting because they're retro and a little bit of theming, and then two games that I would probably never ever try.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, when you have a game that you can't find a YouTube video about that's been out for 6 months to a year, that's a really bad sign. And
Yeah.
that's one of your major launch titles.
Yeah.
That's in your launch announcement content. It's just like, all right, well, I can't find anything for Card Blast, right? So it's yeah, it. I hope they turn around. I hope they take it seriously. I hope they get into it. And I imagine that somebody in there was like, "Oh, hey, look at the gaming space, and you can do streaming gaming, and gaming has more revenue than the entire movie industry."
Yeah.
So it was a no brainer for them to do it. It's just especially relative to like what Amazon's doing, what Google is doing with Stadia, even though Stadia isn't really considered a success, even compared to what Apple's doing. And Apple is definitely not known as a gaming forward
Mm-mm.
company, right? They're
No.
kind of like the main reason to not get a Mac is because you want to play games.
Yeah.
Uh, it's kind of like this. They've absolutely stepped into last place,
Yeah. Okay. Well, you
and
say
they
it.
didn't have to.
So,
They didn't have
yeah.
to.
Yeah. Well, we'll circle back for sure because we're doing
Hmm.
these weekly based on the news and stuff. So as things unfold and stuff, we'll talk about it again. Excuse me. Um, and I wanted to switch over to our next topic, which has been, man, I got so many text messages about this one. So Zillow, the company that has the app where you can look up home values, you can list your home, you can get information about a home that you're about to buy. It helps you find homes, things like that. Their stock tanked after pausing their home buying program called iBuying. So a while back, Zillow CEO came on Mad Money or something like that. And I saw the clip, and he was trying to explain why they've decided that they wanted to start buying houses. And my initial thought on it, to be fair, my initial thought was, I don't know, that's a good idea. That's like a tech company going in and deciding to get into real estate purchasing versus real estate information flow, right? It's just kind
Hmm.
of a different thing. But then I was like, hey, what do I know? They have all the data on houses and they understand kind of what's going on in the market probably better than anybody, right? Or, Redfin, same thing, right? And so basically, the iBuying program is Zillow would just buy your house. right? You don't have to go through the
Hmm.
process of listing it and all that kind of stuff. They would say, we think your house is worth this. We'd love to buy it off of you. Boom, they buy it off of you. Then what they would do with the house is they would hire contractors to go in and clean it up, flip it, sell it, and then they would make a profit. Make a profit on that. Okay, that program did not work out. So the algorithmic model to buy and sell homes rapidly didn't work as planned. They didn't give a lot of details about what that is, but they were saying the inability to forecast prices and the difficulty in getting homes remodeled and flipping due to labor shortages
Hmm.
basically caused them to cancel the program. What we're being told, word on the street, I can't verify this, but they said 2/3 of the homes bought are potentially underwater that they had purchased. Because of that, they are laying off 25% of their staff or something
Hmm.
over the course of probably multiple quarters, I would imagine. What do you think about their move into that space? Like from a UX perspective, right now, that like an experience perspective of selling a home, it's kind of daunting, right? It's like you decide you want to sell your home, then you find an agent, you sign with that agent looks at
Hmm.
your home, you might have to make some improvements or something, not as much in the Bay Area, but maybe outside of the Bay Area, and then you have to list it. People have to come and look at it. Then they make bids or offers on the house. Then you have to pick that person. Then you wait 30 days, as they get to, dig into your house and look at it and gain financing. And then after that is done, officially it's closed. You hand the keys over and your house is sold. It's a long, lengthy, stressful process for a lot of people who do it. This was supposed to change that experience and alleviate that by cutting out the majority of that, and basically Zillow just coming in and saying, like, hey, we're just going to buy your house. Here it is. Boom. Here's the contract. We want to own it. You can just walk away from it quickly. So any thoughts on this news, this big news?
Well, I mean, it's interesting to me that 2/3 of the homes bought are potentially underwater, and what that says to me is that there was a some level of timing of the market that didn't work out for them. Maybe they bought a bunch of houses when the market was high.
Yeah.
Other than that, it's a difficult area to forecast in, especially because a lot of times you're trying to buy homes in a market where homes are selling for significantly over asking, and
Yeah.
then you have the labor shortage, which there has been a labor shortage is affecting construction and things like that for a long time before the pandemic, which we
Yeah.
talked about recently. And so you might be overpaying for that, and the things that they're trying to alleviate from the process in order to provide a better use case or a user experience that incurs additional cost, right? So that's relative to the other investors that are out there that are like BlackRock that are going out and buying up a bunch of homes. Um, so now you're kind of taking on additional costs relative to competition within the market. Not to mention the fact that this is a little bit of the observer effect. By you stepping in and purchasing up homes, you're now adding demand to the market, which is increasing the asking prices on homes.
Hmm.
So these are all factors. This is all very difficult area to get into, which is why I think people do it in more of a bespoke fashion of just
Yeah.
like, right, well, we've got an individual out there who's evaluating homes, finding good deals or good value, and then purchasing it. And then once it's purchased, the issue with investing in homes, or the challenge when it comes to investing in homes, is that you have what is a very illiquid asset, right? In order for you to get your money out of it, you need an exit, which means you need to find a buyer, and you need to find a buyer who's willing to pay more than what you've paid for it. And if you haven't, purchased at a in a advantageous position,
Hmm.
then the other person who's going to buy it, because the only people really buying houses right now are people who have money who own houses, right? So it's going to be private investors or people who already have houses who are switching up to a different house. There's not a lot of new home buyers out there. So they're going to be looking at this from a financial situation of like, hey, I need to get a good deal on this investment. And that might mean paying above asking, but it's going to mean that it's going to be relative to what I think I can sell it for.
Yeah.
So I think it was a challenge, and it's a difficult thing to scale.
It is. And I got to give him credit for trying. I mean, this
Yeah.
industry is a tough industry, and there's a lot of lobbyists in this industry as well to kind of try to keep things the way they are, the model the same, and that kind of stuff. And for them to come in and try to make that work, I mean, kudos to them. I mean, if anyone was going to try and do it and succeed at it, it's going to be one of these companies that has all this data, right? You would imagine that you can
Maybe.
forecast better than other people. But I talked to some real estate people. I was going to give you this update. So I talked to some real estate investors that have purchased many, many homes in the past. And one of the pieces of feedback I was told was, when you're kind of investing and forecasting and that kind of stuff, it's a lot different than forecasting. It's a lot different to forecast in San Francisco or New York or LA than it is to forecast in other areas of the country. The
Yeah.
majority of people who buy a home in other areas outside of these major cities, they don't necessarily see a massive increase in the value of their home over the length of ownership. And so a lot of these companies try to go and say, where's the next Silicon Valley? Where's the next this? And they try to sneak in and kind of grab houses in those areas. And then
Hmm.
sometimes they just tank because
Yeah.
it's just not set up for that. So it's exactly what you said, which is like having that person that's out there like on the streets and talking to people and figuring it out and looking at numbers and all that kind of stuff. It almost produces a much better outcome for the investor than it is
Yeah.
to just look at this algorithmic data uh, and say, I forecast a 5% increase in this city. Let's just go buy a bunch of houses in this city, assuming that's what they did.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know, but if they did make a prediction that Sparks, Nevada, was going to be the next major real estate boom, and they entered into that market and tried to buy a bunch of houses, them entering into that market because they expect that is going to drive up prices by increasing demand.
Yep.
And then if their prediction ended up being wrong and Sparks doesn't end up being a boom town, then they have no movement. But they've even if they can sell the house for and recover their initial investment, they still have a lot of the extra costs involved with going out and researching, buying the house, any improvements they might have made. So it's a challenging area to be in for sure. And we also don't
Absolutely.
know if like the real estate competitors in that area were like, we don't want Zillow coming in here and like pushing us out of business, so we're going to do everything we can to keep them out.
Yeah, who knows how that unfolded? I mean, honestly, I like Zillow. I think it's a great company. I think that once they get through this financial burden or
Yeah.
whatever is going on, if they lost money or and they have to recover from it or whatever, I think it's still going to be a great company. It's a very useful company. Everyone needs the data. There's nothing better when you're looking for a house than to get served up like great options in your area and all the details you need so you can do your homework at home and stuff. So I think it's still a great company. I just wanted to point out that they took a bold move and they tried it out, and so far it didn't work out. I mean, I think the official term was they put a pause on the program, which usually is code for like we're probably not going to come back to this. But
Yeah.
even if they did, maybe they'd come back smaller or smarter or whatever it is. But anyways, I thought that was interesting because it was big thing in the news. I wanted to transition over to our last topic of the day, which always makes me laugh. So Tesla is now valued at $1 trillion and
Hmm.
is once again pushing out its new self-driving beta. They've gone through many revisions of this self-driving beta. It's clear that this is stuff's tough. This is not an easy
Oh yeah.
thing to accomplish. I mean, they seem to be the ones kind of pushing the limits when it comes to how to make this stuff work effectively. But I think we were right when we talked about it early on last year about self-driving is that these last couple phases of getting it to be like fully autonomous and work 99% of the time or whatever it is, those are the big hurdles. Those are the ones that are going to take the longest. But full disclosure, I am a investor in Tesla. I bought Tesla back in like 2014 or something like that, and I still have it.
Hmm.
So I just wanted to like say that to be clear. But I wanted to get your take on what's going on because I have no idea why Tesla. I mean, I have a theory of why Tesla is kind of exploding right now when it comes to valuation, but it doesn't necessarily match up with the numbers. But I
Hmm.
understand the story behind it. Let's put it that way.
Well, let's kind of set a baseline, right? So, number one, I tend to not look a great deal at market capitalization to determine how well a company is doing. I market capitalization to me is a measure of how people expect the company to do in the future. So, if you compare Tesla to their competitors in automotive, and we know that they're not just automotive; they're doing other things. But I don't know how much they're really bringing some of those other things to market. I don't know if they're going to be selling their self-driving technology to other competitors. So I don't know if that's going to be a revenue stream for them in itself. But Tesla has a market capitalization of 1.24 trillion. So that is 5 times their nearest competitor, right? So
Yeah.
Toyota's at, one fifth of that at 250 billion roughly. At the same time, if we compare their revenue, Toyota has nearly 10 times the revenue of Tesla. So to say, what that says to me, Tesla's a great company. They're putting out great products. But to me, that says that from a market capitalization standpoint, Tesla is overvalued. And part of
Hmm.
that is because of anticipation of where they're going to go in the future.
Yep.
Um, and part of that is just honestly, it's just brand value. It's the brand value of the stock itself. People are out there buying Tesla so they can go have lunch with their friends and talk about how they own Tesla stock. So it's that I think is it speaks less to the performance of the company and more to the performance and perception of the stock itself, which really complicates everything.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot
Plus,
of people. I'll say this one thing. There are a lot of forecasters and analysts and stuff like that with a lot more data and spend their whole entire day analyzing this stuff. Just we do not. We review
yeah.
things, but we're not like digging in as much as they do. And they even say we understand that Tesla is a big technology company, not a car company. We understand where it's going. We understand that they have, they're in the solar business. They're in the what is called manufacturing business. They're in the robotics business, they're in the car business, they're in the energy business, and they're kind of like innovating in all those spaces. But we don't have a metric that we can give you that explains why it's going that high, other than people love the company and they just want to keep investing into it at this moment. Meaning, like,
Oh
they
yeah.
understand it's a great company, it's going great places, just like you said. But when it comes to the metric itself, the actual reason that it's $1,200 a share instead of being $750 a share or something like that
hmm
is merely kind of unknown.
Well, you could speculate in a lot of ways. Like again, I tend to try to avoid looking at market capitalization and stock price when I'm evaluating a company itself because in my head they've now become different things, completely different things. One thing is not driven by the other. One of the things that I think you might end up finding, and I haven't looked at the data yet, is that when you have a bull run within the crypto space, that Tesla will kind of also catch some wind from those sales
Yep.
because if you look at the user experience, the demographics like of those crypto investors, crypto enthusiasts, because of Elon Musk's take on an involvement in crypto, then from a brand perspective, I imagine quite a few of those people are selling off some of those their gains and diversifying by investing into Tesla.
Hmm.
So that it's the diversification strategy. So that's one of the things you see since diversification became a big thing over the past couple decades is that markets tend to move together because
Yes. Yes.
yes, because as things do well, they diversify. They sell off that one really high performing asset and invest and use it to diversify across different assets that can raise the entire market because you're increasing market demand for investment markets. And when things go down, everything goes down because everybody starts selling everything, right? So they all kind of link together. This is why I look at company performance from kind of a revenue, sales, and growth and brand perception of those products, right? So that's product marketing less than like company marketing and the perception of the company as a whole.
Yeah.
That said, Tesla, great company, it is insane to me that we have more advancements in self-driving vehicles, given the danger and the difficulty that's involved in it, and regulation is allowing that, but they're not allowing drone delivery, which
Yeah.
is
Right.
much safer, reduces the amount of large delivery vehicles on the road, and would really help with the supply chain issue we're having right now if a drone could deliver something to your front or backyard, rather than somebody in a giant truck that can kill people if somebody falls asleep behind the wheel. And that's not done because of privacy concerns, even though the safety concerns of self-driving vehicles is much greater.
Yeah. Also too, the self-driving vehicles are trying to solve that problem, to be fair as well. People falling asleep and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I think that all the companies that are in this space right now have really said that the long haul drivers, finding ways to wake them up
Hmm.
and automate and all that kind of stuff. Everyone's working on the overall problem, but I will say one thing: self-driving cars as a means to change the automobile landscape is really they've been kind of like pushing this since the X Prize in 2004, I think it was, right? So
Yeah.
it's been just a lot longer. I actually think the drone stuff, to be fair, I think it's coming up. I think you're going to hear a lot more about it in the next 24 to 36 months because um, Google's Wing program and all these others, I've seen some of the videos of them doing their testing and stuff like that. It's getting
Hmm.
extremely proficient. And I think with Pete Buttigieg, listening to all the different tech companies talk to them about innovations in these spaces and stuff like that, I think we're going to see a lot more in the next couple of
Yeah.
years. I think it's just a little bit behind the self-driving car stuff.
Yeah, well, the reality is the self driving vehicles, once it gets figured out, and it could, and people who are investing heavily in Tesla have to understand that Tesla, if they can get to full self autonomous driving, they're not going to have they're not going to have a monopoly on that technology. They're probably not going to sell it out that much. And you're going to see a company like Google, who started earlier and might be ahead of them as far as performance, is going to be out there not producing cars and just licensing this technology out to all their competitors. So I don't know that it's going
That's
to be
my
a
theory
huge
on
shift
Tesla,
in that.
honestly. I
Yeah.
think Tesla's going to license some of this stuff in the future. I think a lot of these car companies will look at it and say, okay, they're pushing heavily on the software side of this stuff and really investing into it, and maybe we
Hmm.
can partner with them and do it because I know that they're already doing that
Yeah.
for robotics and manufacturing to help people get their manufacturing plants more efficient.
If they're smart, that's what they would do. Especially if they're the first ones to come out, and they can come out and license it to all the other there's not that many other car manufacturers, so if they can become the default before a competitor can step in. I don't really tout first mover advantage or first to market advantage anymore, because it seems as though the first company to release something in a certain area tends to get slaughtered, and or eventually replaced by somebody else, and that replacement does better. But this is an area where if you have really good underlying fundamental technology that's kind of like an infrastructure swing, they can do very, very well by having that kind of Windows model and getting into all the different vehicles out there.
Absolutely, yeah. I
But
think the goal, yeah.
if they don't, then they're just another auto manufacturer who should be judged on their car sales primarily.
Yeah, and the thing is like when you look at it and you look back at it, I think the biggest misconception between what you hear coming out of analysts from New York versus San Francisco, and I know that
Hmm.
everyone talks to everyone, but they still feel different, is like analysts in New York and other places keep calling it a car company, and the ones in San Francisco call it a technology company. And I think that there's like a big fundamental thinking difference around that, which is if you're a tech
Yeah.
company, this is one product of many, which it's true. They have like five products, right? And then if you look at it as just a car company, then it's just a car company, right?
I still consider them a car company. That's I consider a company based on kind of more their culture rather than anything else, and rather than just what is the main thing they put out.
Yeah.
And you know you there's a variety of companies that put out a variety of products, but they're still kind of known as that individual thing, right? There's Fidelity is involved in real estate. I wouldn't consider them a real estate company. To me, they're finance.
Yeah.
So same thing with Tesla. I still primarily consider them to be a car company. And honestly, I look at every time I get into a Tesla, I think, wow, this is so far ahead of what all the other auto manufacturers are doing from a user experience and kind of interface standpoint.
Yeah.
But I also think to myself, there is substantial, obvious improvements that could be made by just having somebody like us go in and do like a heuristic evaluation and saying like, yeah, this needs to change, that needs to change, that
Oh,
needs to
absolutely.
change.
Yeah, 100%. And I
Yeah.
think they always do. I mean, I think the thing that really kind of showed it showed kind of indicated to me that they were so far ahead was I talked to five people who own Teslas, and these are five people
Hmm.
that I know and trust that owned regular vehicles before, and they said I can't even classify it as the same as other vehicles. Like you get in and you feel like you're in a rocket ship, and quiet.
Mhm.
It's got the beautiful screen. It tells you where you need to go. It has, I mean, they keep adding more and more amazing
Yeah.
features. It's got that dog feature where it'll like keep the airflow going while you're out of the car, so the dog can sit in there. Like there's just, if
Mhm.
you fall asleep, it automatically tries to wake you up using rings and bells and all. I mean, just so much tech that's
Yeah.
integrated into it. It's very different. But at the same time, they said, some of those things, for sure can be replicated, right? And
Well,
so
yeah.
a good company like Ford or whatever that comes in and says, hey, look, we're going to copy that. We're going to do this, this, and this, as long as they're not infringing on patents or whatever it is, those cars can kind of meet in the middle at some point. I just don't think it's going to happen
Yeah.
anytime soon, to be honest with you. I think it's going to be like 10 years from now.
Yeah, part of me feels like the Tesla vehicles feel so advanced, partially because all the other vehicles are so far behind,
Oh, yeah.
right? Like I feel like it. I feel like they could be much more advanced than where they are. It feels like there's a lot of low hanging fruit that they could implement. The giant touchscreen thing to me, from an interface standpoint, is like, you know what? Dials exist for a reason. Toggle switches exist for a reason. Some hardware controls would make sense in certain areas rather than just touchscreen, given how error prone touchscreen can be.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's just one example. There's again, best cars on the market, best design, best UX, but could be so much more.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's what we got for today, D. Those were our topics. I think they were really good ones because this has been a very, very busy week. That was super fun to kind of dig into that. It was good to kind of debate with you earlier today because it made me think, about my way of approaching or thinking about some of these products being released and that kind of stuff. So it was really
Mm-hmm.
fun. Um, I want to thank everyone so much for taking the time to listen to us today. We really appreciate it. We will be posting our links to many of these sources that we referenced on Twitter. So you can find us and follow us at Twitter at the X Podcast One. That's the X Podcast and the number one. If you like this podcast, found it interesting or informative, it helps us a great deal if you subscribe or leave a review on whatever platform you use. Thanks, everyone, and we will see you all next week.